everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to make some chili lime swordfish steaks, cilantro lime rice. We're going to saute up some yellow squash with peppers, kind of just like a savory flavor. And we're going to bake up our sourdough loaf. Oh, and we're going to make a cucumber lime salsa to go on top of our chili lime swordfish. So kind of fun meal today. I have my, this one looks like it popped out of my bag here. We're going to do a little surgery. It was a poppin' one. We're just going to cut off this little lip. Otherwise, it'd be like a tumor on it. There you go. When in doubt, snip it off. Okay, let's flip this guy out onto our parchment paper. Here we go. It must have been a really poppin' loaf. I have had it cold fermenting in my fridge for about 2 days now. So hopefully it will have a good pop. We're gonna give it a nice score. And then again, I'm pretty basic here. We're just gonna do our kind of wheat leaf. There we go. And then I always just like to do another really deep kind of expansion score. Now, when I flip this, I did not evenly put it in the middle of my parchment paper. So we're going to have to be a little careful here moving it in. Okay, we're going to put it in our Dutch oven, which is really, really hot. I have it preheated up to 500 degrees for the last hour, so it's nice and hot. We're going to put our lid on, and we're going to pop this in the oven at 500 degrees for 20 minutes. Then we'll take our lid off, and then we'll cook it for 20 more minutes at 450. There we go. So in there, ready to bake now. We'll see it back in 20 minutes. I'll set my timer because I will forget. And I remember to keep the oven on too. Okay, we've got to get our rice rinsed and going because again, that takes about 30 minutes to cook up. So we're going to get that going on here. I have 2 cups of jasmine rice. So we're going to rinse it here in the sink because with the rice, if you want it to end up nicely, rinse it. Otherwise, it's going to be a little bit mushy. You're not going to get those good grains on it. And this just gives you a better product. It just washes off some of that extra starch. Some people say you got to wash it for 10 minutes. You don't have to wash it for 10 minutes. I wash it for like 30 seconds to a minute, and it works out well for me. There we go. So just run it through, shake it off. You just want to get off that creaminess for it. So that way your grains of rice, they're not going to stick to each other in the pan. And they'll be a nice product. So I've got 2 cups of jasmine rice here. And I'm going to add in 3 cups of water. And let me get my little spoon out here. We're going to add a scoop of chicken bouillon because I want it's going to be like a cilantro lime rice, but with a light kind of chicken flavor underneath it. So just about a teaspoon of chicken bouillon. That's going to give it a little bit of a saltiness flavor and just a really subtle kind of mix. I think it just makes it taste a little bit better. There we go. Just making sure I get all that bouillon off my thing. You could also do this in just like 3 cups of chicken broth if you wanted to, because we're kind of going for a more mild flavor. And then I'm going to add in some fresh lime juice. So I'm going to kind of cut off. We're going to squeeze a little bit now, and then we're going to also squeeze a little bit in when it's ready, and we'll mix it up.
You have a question. How many cups of water did you say?
3 cups of water. So 2 cups of rice to 3 cups of water. We're going to add in a little bit of our cilantro and we're going to add in some of our green onions here, kind of just the white parts on the bottom. That's going to add a little bit of an onion flavor to it as well. So we're going to kind of cut these off. And I'm just going to use kind of the white parts in here. Last one. Good thing I have a long enough counter. Although one time I lost an egg, it rolled off the other end. It was quite hilarious. And then the dogs found it and they enjoyed some nice egg. Okay. We're going to just mince this up because we want this cilantro to have as many little cuts in it as possible to give it a nice little flavor. Again, you can always toss in some fresh cilantro at the very end as well. But I find if I cook it in it, it gives it a little bit more of a muted cilantro flavor to it, which my kids tend to like a little bit better. Okay, let's add these herbs into our rice base here. And we'll bring it to a boil on high. And once it has a nice kind of rolling boil for about 30 seconds to a minute, then we'll put it down to low and let it kind of simmer at low with the lid on. So I'm going to bring it up to high. I'm going to give it a good stir. And just want some of that bouillon to dissolve and mix around. Beautiful. And then once it's got a boil, we'll turn it down low. Now, while we're waiting, let's marinate up our swordfish steaks so that they can sit. We're not going to cook them until a little bit closer to the end because fish doesn't need very long to cook, but we want these flavors to kind of really sit in here and marinate. So I've got some lime. I'm just going to cut them into bits so I can squeeze their juice out a little bit easier. So we're going to start. I'm going to squeeze a little bit of lime over them. I'm doing lime first because I want this juice to kind of start marinating into the steak. So I'm going to put it on top. So there we go. And then we're going to add our spices. So just get my hands a little bit. We are going to be using today, we're going to use some chili powder, some paprika, a little bit of onion powder, and then, of course, my beloved garlic salt. Okay, I'm going to start with the onion powder, sprinkle it over, just a light dusting over it. This is just going to give it a little bit of a savory type crust on our swordfish. There we go. And I'm going to do the paprika, and we're going to do it very, very gently because this one is missing its top. There we go. This is going to give it a nice kind of rich color when it sautés up, but it will also give it a nice savory flavor, which is going to pair really well with the chili powder. And now we're going to use just plain old chili powder, not chipotle or adobe. Just keep it basic, a little simple. And we're going to shake a little dusting over it. Let me give it a good shake up first. Sometimes if you don't use a spice for a while, it will sit on the bottom there. So I always need to give it a little shake up to let it kind of come out. Here we go. And then last, our garlic salt. We're going to dust it, and then we're going to flip these guys over, and we're going to do this all over again on the other side because we really want our swordfish steaks to have a lot of flavor to them, especially because they are a thicker cut of fish. They're really flaky. They're a bit more meaty. So let's flip these guys over. There we go. And then I'm going to go wash my hands, and we're going to go marinate them again. Give my hands a little dry there. Okay, I'm going to start with my lime. I'm going to squeeze it over. A nice little drizzle on each one. You don't have to completely drench it. A little bit of lime juice will go a long way into getting that flavor in there. We're also going to be making a cucumber lime salsa to go on top, so we'll get even more lime flavor there. And let's start with our onion powder. Again, a little shaky, shaky, shake over the top. And then our paprika. There we go. Just lightly dust it. And so it's going to give it a nice kind of coloring when you cook it up, as well as just a really mild, savory flavor that's going to blend well with that chili powder. Again, we've got our chili powder here. And a light dusting over it. Now we're doing kind of like a dry rub, quick marinade on it. If you want these, you could actually take all of these ingredients, kind of mix it together with a little bit of olive oil, and you could actually marinate them for like 30 minutes to overnight to really bring the flavor like depth and even longer. This is going to give us a really quick marinade, so we'll have a lot of seasoning on that crust that will then bring it through, but you could definitely marinate longer and like put it in a Ziploc baggie. There we go. So we've got our fish all marinated up. And let's start prepping our stuff for our veggies here. A little cilantro leaf I'm going to throw in here. I'm going to give this a little stir. I always like to stir just every so often because a lot of times rice, if you don't stir it, it's going to stick to the bottom of your pan. So give it a good stir. It's starting to get a simmer on it, but we want a good rolling boil because if you don't let it get to that rolling boil, you're going to have a little bit of a crunchy rice. We'll save some of these limes to the side. And we're going to start cutting up our yellow onion for our yellow squash and pepper kind of like saute. So I'm just going to take off the ends and then this top little things. This is just a small yellow onion. If you're using a bigger one, you just need about a half an onion for this dish. And I'm going to cut it in half, and we're going to do kind of long and stringy for this, kind of like how you would like with fajita veggies. There we go. And I'm going to get my olive oil starting to cook up over here. And we're going to make sure there's a couple rice. Whoa, almost knocked that over. A couple rice grains on here. I'm going to just slide them off because otherwise they'll start smoking. I'm going to turn my saute pan on about a 6. And we're going to put in about, I want to say a tablespoon of olive oil in here.
You have a question. How was the soup?
It was excellent. It was really delicious. I wasn't sure whether Teddy was going to like it. But when he kind of woke up from his nap / quiet time, he really loved the soup. He kept asking, he wanted tomato basil soup today. And I was like, oh, buddy, I don't have enough tomatoes to make tomato basil soup. But we made our things and he loved it. And he dipped his little bit of his sandwich into the broth. He's learning like his mother. But the cookies have been a huge hit. I will say everyone loved the cookies.
And you have a question about the fish. What's a good substitute for this recipe?
Oh, for using a different type of fish, you could use a cod. You could use a tuna steak as well. Honestly, this could work well with a tilapia. Any really white fish would work well with this as well. Tuna steaks are going to give you the same kind of texture type whatnot for it because swordfish is a little bit more of a meaty one, but it will work well with a wide variety of white fish. Okay, we're going to add in our onions here. There we go. I'm going to get my tongs out. We're going to give these a quick toss. And then I can see my rice is starting to get a nice boil here. So I'm going to give it a stir one more time. And then once it comes up to a good boil after this stir, then I will turn it down to low and put the lid on.
Question. What's your favorite meal to make?
Ooh, my favorite meal to make is probably ravioli because I love ravioli. It's a labor of love because I make my own homemade pasta, filling, and it's like a whole event. I remember the first time I made ravioli several years ago. It took me forever to make it. It was like 4 hours. And granted, I'm making a huge amount for my family plus, leftovers. So it's typically when I'm making it for like 10 people. But I love it because I love homemade pasta. And I feel like it's just one of those things that I just feel like I've accomplished so much when I've made it. So definitely ravioli is my favorite one to make. Although I really enjoy, and this is not necessarily a single meal, but our Swedish smorgasbord, which is our kind of our Christmas feast in Swedish, which is like a multi-course meal. But I really enjoy making that and all the different Swedish foods and designing how it's going to be. I love that. Okay, our thing is onto a really good boil now. So I'm going to turn it down to low. I'm going to put my lid on and we're going to let it simmer for about like 20, 30 minutes. It should be done right when our bread is going to be done. Okay, let's get I'm going to bring some of my veggies up here. Our peppers. I'm going to save 2 for our salsa. And then I'm going to cut up these. So I'm just going to use these red sweet peppers so they're not hot peppers. You could use a bell pepper if you wanted. I personally prefer sweet peppers over bell peppers because I feel like their flavors are a little bit less bitter. And if I'm going to use a bell pepper, I'll stick with my red, yellow, or orange because, again, I think they're less bitter than the green bell pepper. There we go. Just taking out some of these seeds, and then we're going to slice these up. And these are going to go with our yellow squash. But we're going to let our onions have a moment to caramelize because, again, onions just need to be by themselves in a pan for a little bit. And we're going to do kind of same thing, just nice little slices, kind of like a fajita veggie slice. When you're cutting peppers, I find that it is much easier to cut them from the inside out. The inside has this rougher texture on it, which allows you to grip it versus that slippery outside texture where you're more likely to slip and slide, especially if your knife is dull. Get some of these seeds out. Here we go. And pull out, kind of de-beard it a little bit. A lot of times sweet peppers don't have very many seeds. Today they had a lot of seeds. It's also one thing that's nice about them is they're not as seedy as bell peppers. Although the one fun thing about bell peppers is when you get, I always say the pregnant bell pepper, because it has a little one growing inside. I always think that's so much fun when you get one of those. Okay, let's give our onions a quick toss here. I'm going to turn it down now to about a 4 now that my pan is nice and hot. There we go. We're going to let those sit for just a second. I'm going to put this to the side and get my little things here. We can start prepping up our yellow squash to go in here. The other day I made something with yellow squash, and I kid you not, I kept calling it zucchini the whole time. And I'm like, I know it's yellow squash, but for some reason in my head, I just called it zucchini. We're going to cut these. I'm going to quarter them because I find with yellow squash, they are, when you leave them kind of whole, and you cut them just in a disc, that inside is pretty seedy and it gets kind of mushy. So I kind of just quarter them. That way you kind of divide up that like little inner circle part. And then I'm not going to cut them too thin because, again, they can get kind of mushy. They're got a high water content. So you want to leave them with enough of like a meatiness to them.
You have a question? When are you going to start your fall meals?
I'm like sitting here. I've kind of been debating because it's still like 95 degrees here in Tennessee. And even though my mind has like switched over because the kids are back, like it's fall, I'm like, part of me is like at the same time, I'm like, okay, we can't do it yet. It's still really hot. It'd be weird. Although I did make a soup today and I go sit there and I'm like, I normally try to avoid soups during the summer because it's so hot, unless it's like a gazpacho or vichyssoise, which are those chilled soups, which are so delicious. But I think I'm going to be starting, maybe once we get to September. I feel like, and I'm a little crazy here, guys, but when September hits, I decorate my house for Halloween. I am a little obsessed with fall and Halloween. I've got like 15 huge tubs of Halloween decorations. I've got Halloween sheets that go on everybody's beds. I love it. I am just Halloween and then wintertime. Those are my time to shine. I love them. So we will definitely kind of there. But I feel like August is still a little bit summer, even though the kids are in school. I am planning, I think we might this weekend or next weekend. I've got to look at our schedule. We want to go hit the apple orchard that's kind of near where we live. And I say near, it's like an hour and a bit away from us. But I love picking my own apples. That experience. I always grew up going to an apple orchard when I was a kid. So I like to take my kids to it because I don't know, it's just something magical. I think it's like that romanticized thing. Like, I wish I could have my own farm, and and the reality is your own farm's a lot of work. So I'll go and visit and pick my apples, but then I can do all of my apple recipes. And then after I've got through my apple, we can go into the pumpkin and fall recipes. So I've got a plan. But I got to just make it fit. Tennessee weather never cooperates. We had like 2 weeks ago, it was like low 80s, high 70s, wonderful. And I was like, oh, fall showed up early. And then it's heat wave, 90 degrees. Kids are doing soccer games outside and it's very, very hot. Okay, we got our peppers in. We're going to let them saute up for a few minutes, get a little bit of heat on them before we add in our yellow squash here.
You have a question? Was the swordfish frozen?
Yes, it was frozen. I did a overnight defrost in the refrigerator. And then I just pulled them out and I patted them dry to soak up any of the extra one. And that's one thing I find. If frozen fish is great, it's affordable, it's easy access to use. Just make sure you pat it dry to suck out any of that extra liquid in it so it cooks up a little bit nicer. Sometimes, especially with the more exotic fish, you don't always have options for those to be fresh. Like, you can typically always get salmon and tilapia fresh, cod sometimes, and, catfish. But when you want to get more of the cool stuff, you don't really have those options as much. Let's take a pause here. I'm going to stir this. Our oven is beeping, so we are ready to take the lid off of our sourdough and check its pop. And I always say this is the moment of truth to make sure it got proofed well. I've only had it miss puff a couple of times. And one time was I put it in my outside refrigerator for the cold proof and it partially froze. So my loaf did not puff. But hopefully, look at our beautiful peak there bursting through. So we know we've got this is going to be a good loaf. I'm going to pop it back in my oven, and then we're going to turn our temperature down to 450 degrees, and then we're going to cook for the last 20 minutes at 450. Now, this is going to give you a really nice golden brown crust that isn't too crunchy. I don't like to cook mine to a dark brown because I find that crust can get rock hard once it kind of cools down, and so I prefer a lighter blonde crust. It gives you, I think, a much better sourdough that you can eat over multiple days. Okay. Let's get our zucchini, or not zucchini, I'm doing it again. Let's get our yellow squash. This is yellow. This is not green. Different green. So let's get this in here. Let it start kind of sauteing up. Give it a nice little toss. Kind of coat it with the residual oil in here. And this is going to be kind of just our little yellow squash veggie medley that we'll have with our kind of cilantro lime rice, and then our tuna steaks that we'll start cooking up here in a little bit, because we're going to be doing it in kind of like 2 batches. And then we're going to make a cucumber lime salsa to go on top of this. So this is going to go in our kind of our little veggies over here when they're kind of cooked up. So I'm going to grab 2 little bowls here.
You have a question? Do you like the hex clad pans, and are they worth it?
I absolutely love the hex-clad pans. I definitely say they're 100% worth it. I got mine about 2 years ago. Kind of when we remodeled our kitchen, I bought myself a set because I was like, oh, I've got a new kitchen. I need new ones. 2 years, I have yet to scratch them. They clean up really, really easy. You can see there's like no really grime or anything on them. And I will say, again, I have yet to scratch them, which is a miracle because all of my other nonstick pans always were ruined. So I love them. They're definitely worth their money. They cook really well. They clean up well. They distribute the heat well. So I love them. I actually like them so much. I added them into my Amazon storefront. I have got the 12-inch, the 10-inch, the 8-inch, and then I have the griddle pan, the 12-inch griddle pan. So I have to say, I do love them. I highly recommend them. And I will say, they're like the Gordon Ramsay pans. And I kept debating whether to get them because I was like, oh, they are a little bit more expensive, but I like, they're great. They're a game changer. I know I did my research. My brother-in-law had them, and I will always say he's a kind of a foodie. He's one of those ones who kind of also inspired my cooking growing up because he was always cooking really fabulous meals, really bougie stuff, and just was always like did fun things. And any we came and visit, he always make us special meals. So he's got all like the fun little gadgets and tools. So he loved them. So I highly recommend them. Okay, we're gonna mince up our red onion here. This is gonna go in our cucumber lime salsa. You want to use a red onion, not a yellow onion. You could get by with a white onion as well. White onion is going to give you a bit more of a bite to it, but versus the red onion is going to be a little bit more mild. So it just depends on how you like your onion. But don't use a yellow. Yellow is going to be too astringent flavored in it. I've got 3 baby cucumbers that we're going to use for this salsa. Since they're the baby cucumbers, I'm not going to peel them because that skin is really delicate and it doesn't need to be peeled. If you're going to use like the classic, Bonnie, I feel like they're called the Bonnie cucumbers. Those you're going to want to peel because that skin is a little bit more chewy. Give this a toss. And then I'm going to add in some oil to my pan and we're going to start searing off our swordfish steaks here while we make our salsa. I'm going to get my oil heating up. I'm going to put in about maybe 2 tablespoons of olive oil. I want enough to kind of just do a really thin layer on the bottom of my pan. And that way I'll have enough through both fry, sauteing of it. I'm going to heat my pan up on a 6. And once it's nice and hot, we'll add in our first round of swordfish steaks. Let's get our cucumbers here. I prefer baby cucumbers in making a salsa or English cucumbers because they are, again, a bit more delicate and just a more mild of a flavor. But again, you could really use any one. So we're going to chop it up and add here. I'm doing a cucumber salsa because I want it to be really light and refreshing and for that lime to really pop through on this. The other day I made like a mango salsa and then, I've done tomato salsas, avocado, corn salsas. But for this dish with the chili lime, I feel like I didn't want to do something too sweet. I wanted to be more refreshing and really pick up on that lime flavor. So we've got our, and I will say there's nothing more refreshing than cucumbers. They're just, I feel like they're a fruit that or not a fruit, but a veggie that is, it's like the watermelon of veggies. Just really refreshing and light. Okay, we've got our baby cukes cut up in here. I've got my red onions underneath, and then I'm going to use just 2 sweet peppers here. This is going to give a little bit of a crunch to our salsa, along with that kind of red onion. Let's take those seeds out. There we go. And then I'm going to do, again, a finer dice on this because I want it to, I want them to be small, not huge pieces of pepper so that they're not overpowering. You'll get the crunch, but you're not just going to be like, oh, that's a pepper. I want it to really blend well. There we go. And then I'll just do a couple random chops over this. And then I'm going to just take a quick pause and feel the heat coming up, see if it's nice and hot yet. Give these a little toss. We'll season these up, but I like to always wait to season up my veggies at the very end so that the spices don't stick and burn to the bottom of our pan. Okay, let's add our peppers in here. And then I'm going to get a little drop of water and test the heat of my oil. I think it might need a little bit longer, but I'm just going to test it real quick. I always use just a little drop of water. If it sizzles right away, I know it's ready. It didn't sizzle yet, so we need a little bit longer. I'm just going to turn it up a little bit higher, let it heat, and then we'll bring it down when it gets cooler. Let's chop up some of our cilantro to go into our kind of cucumber salsa here. So I'm going to pick off, I've been using a lot of cilantro this week. You know, when you get a big bunch, I feel like I kind of try to incorporate it because it doesn't last long. And it's one of those things where I can never grow it well here in Tennessee because it's so hot that I feel like it just wilts. Same with my dill. I can never really get dill to grow well. It will grow well for like 2 weeks and then it just like, it wilts. Okay, we're going to do a nice little chop up on here. I'm going to mince it nice and fine because I don't want it really leafy in my salsa. And the more cuts that you put on the cilantro, the more flavor that's going to come out versus if you just kind of leave it whole in the leaf. Here we go. Okay, our olive oil looks like it's ready. So I can kind of feel the heat coming off. I'm going to grab a tong and we're going to start putting our swordfish steaks on. I'm going to pick my biggest ones to go first because this is not wanting to. There we go. They're going to sit and rest. So if you put your biggest ones first, they're less likely to get overcooked versus your little ones. There we go. And we're going to let it sear. I'm going to turn it now down to about a 5. My oil is hot, but I'm going to turn it down. You don't want to keep it cooking on that high level or you'll burn your fish. Okay. We're getting a good little char up on our zucchini and our onions here. Which is,
you have a question? Do you eat the skin?
I do not eat the skin, but I know you can. I will just kind of cut it off when there, but I like to keep it on because it helps keep the fish more juicy on there. But yes, I do not keep it on there. We'll cut it off, and I cut it off for my kids as well. Let's add in I'll save these to sprinkle over. I'll cut up a new lime for this. We're going to put a good amount of lime juice in this salsa because that's going to be like the acidic base to it, and make it really, really fresh. So squeeze it in. A little bit more. Because again, we want that really tart flavor to come through. I'm really wringing out these lime for it. And we'll use a little bit of this. Well, maybe not that one. Throw that away because I will step on it if I leave it there. And then I'll go down. There we go. Let me grab a spoon real quick and we'll give this a nice toss. And then we'll add in a little bit of garlic salt to it. But it's just going to be a really refreshing light salsa that's going to have that nice lime and cilantro kick to it. But that cucumber is just going to make it more refreshing than if you were to use a tomato. It's just lighter, more summery. Okay, and then we're going to put a little bit of garlic salt on here because you need a little saltiness as well. So just a little shaky, shaky. I like to do a little dusting of it over the top. This will give it also a little bit of that nice garlic flavor to it and just the right amount of saltiness. There we go. So we've got ours right here. I'm going to check. I think we've got a good kind of to flip our fish through. Put it here. My spatula doesn't want to go down. Let's give this a toss. Beautiful. These are just about ready. I'm getting this nice little, this is where I'm trying to get this. You see those little brown edges on it? That nice little sear on our yellow squash. It just gives it a little bit of a crusty flavor. I'm going to turn this down to low now. And I'm going to take my first one and kind of flip it here. There we go. Whoop. There.
You have a question? Can you go over what's in the salsa?
Yes. Get it right here just a second. So we've got our swordfish steaks cooking up in here. So in our salsa, we've got our got 3 baby cucumbers, red onions, sweet peppers, fresh lime juice, cilantro, and garlic salt. So just a really fresh salsa. Will have a crunch to it, but it will be really refreshing with that lime juice and those cucumbers. So they'll add just a lot of really delicious flavor. Okay, let's add in. I'm going to add in my lighter green onions first. We're going to let these saute up. And then we'll add in our dark green parts right before we serve it. But I always like the white parts to kind of cook up a little bit longer than the green ones because they just need a minute for their flavor to come out. So add that in there. But you don't want to put them in at the beginning of the cooking time because they'll really wilt and get kind of soggy. So towards the very end, let me grab my garlic salt. Keeping it simple here, just a little bit of garlic salt over the veggies. Just let their natural flavors kind of keep in play. Let's check on our rice, see how it's going. I'm going to give it a nice kind of fluff. Beautiful. So I'm going to turn it off now, and we're just going to let it kind of steam out with the lid off for those last parts, which will help kind of dry it out so it gets more fluffy versus super moist. Okay, and then I'm going to get a baking sheet here to put our first set of our swordfish off, our first set. That way they can sit and continue cooking. That's why we put our fattest ones first. Because remember with fish, it is really quick to cook. You don't need to cook it nearly as long as a chicken or, different cuts of meat. Fish cooks up really fast. There we go. Now we're going to put our second set of swordfish steaks in. Now, grilling is also another great option for swordfish because you can get those nice grill marks on it, and it does really well under high heat, cooking up fast, kind of like how tuna does really well. There we go. I'm going to let these sear up. I'm gonna give this a toss now. We'll let our spices kind of mix in. Beautiful. It's got these nice, I will say this is going to be a pretty meal because it's got all of these nice kind of vibrant colors to it. We're going to do a little squirt of lime juice over our veggies here. Again, we're just going to bring these really fresh, happy flavors in. I'm going to wash my hands now. And then I'm going to get a small bowl here, and we're going to crumble up a little bit of queso fresco for this. This is going to play really well with that chili lime flavor. It crumbles up nicely. Think about how like feta cheese is a bit crumbly. This will crumble up nicely on there, and we can have these little cheese crumbles over the top, which will pair well with that chili flavor with the lime. We don't need a whole lot. I feel like these last a lot. So I'm just going to take off part of my block here, and then we're going to crumble it so that when we are ready to put it over our dish, it will be there. Do you see how it just kind of crumbles up nicely? And we'll sprinkle this over the top. It's going to give out just a lovely extra fresh flavor to our dish. Okay, let's get our steaks flipped here. Beautiful. And perfect. We got this nice crispy sear on them. You can see that's our paprika, our onion powder, that chili powder. Those are kind of the spices. If you wanted to do a blackened swordfish, you would just double up your paprika and give it a really thick coating of it. And that will give you that more blackened color texture all the way through. The other day we did blackened cod, and that's what that paprika is really great at. Okay. Give our veggies. We're going to toss in our remaining green onions here. And then our sourdough has about a minute left on it, so we can head over there in just a second. But let's add in our last bit of green onions here. And again, these green onions you add towards the end because they're going to add that just really lovely fresh bite of onion flavor to it. Beautiful. Okay. I'm going to turn this off because when we come back, those should be completely done. Let's go grab our sourdough. I'm going to put my trivet right over here because it's going to be hot. Look at that. Perfect. Like 20 seconds left. So here is our beautiful sourdough. This is a traditional loaf. I got to get my oven mitts on, but look at that nice kind of golden brown color. We've got this beautiful peak right there from our expansion score in here. And I love, as I said, a nice blonde color. And you get that from reducing the temperature down to 450 when you take the lid off, and then just cooking it for 20 minutes. Okay, I'm going to pull these eyes out because this Dutch oven will stay nice and hot for a while afterwards, and I don't like my crust on the bottom to get overcooked. So here's our beautiful loaf there. You can see our kind of big peak at the top from our expansion score. And here, our leaf. But we've got this just beautiful color here. But the best part is you see how you've got this light blonde color on there. So it's not going to be like a rock hard or a crunch to it. But you know you've got a great loaf when you've got this good peak here.
You have a question? What seasons with the rice?
The rice, we used a little bit of chicken bouillon, cilantro, and lime juice. And now we've got the last little thing is we put some lime juice in because I like that flavor. But to get that extra little kick, we're going to squirt a little bit more lime juice in here to get a little bit of fresh, and then sprinkle just a teensy bit of garlic salt to finish it off. And that's just going to give you that lovely cilantro lime. If you want a stronger cilantro kick in, add in about another tablespoon of chopped up cilantro. But we are done eating. I've got everything, or done, not done eating, done cooking. We're ready to eat. So let's build our bowl. I'm going to bring my cucumber salsa and over here because we'll assemble our bowl over here, or our plate next to our beautiful sourdough loaf. Now we're not going to cut into our sourdough loaf yet because you got to wait 10 minutes after taking it out of the oven, at least 10 minutes, for the steam to escape out. Because if you cut into it prematurely, what's going to happen is it's going to get gummy, and then it's not going to have that full bubble to it because you'll kind of push it down and then it sticks to each other. So don't rush it. Let it wait. Okay, let's serve up our things. So we're going to make a lovely bed of our cilantro lime rice here. So I've got our bed. And then we're going to place our swordfish steak. Actually, not the swordfish steak yet. Wasn't paying attention. We're going to do our veggies first because these veggies you'll kind of mix lovely into the rice here. So we've got our sautéed yellow squash, peppers, onions, and then lots and lots of fresh green onions. Here is our chili lime swordfish steak that we marinated in chili powder, paprika, onion powder, and lime juice. Then you're going to top it with a nice helping of this cucumber lime salsa that we made with baby cucumbers, red onions, peppers, cilantro and lime juice, and a little bit of garlic salt. And then we'll top it with our queso fresco cheese, which will just add a lovely flavor to it, kind of a creamy base, a little bit of salt to it. And then, of course, we'll serve it up with a slice of our homemade traditional sourdough loaf. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to that link, search for what we cooked for. So we've got our swordfish steak, kind of cilantro lime bowls, kind of chili lime bowls. And you can watch and cook along with us again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear in it. We've got our HexClad in it, our all-clad saute pans. I've got my knives, my cutting boards, my baking sheets, all the different gadgets that I use in my kitchen. I have in my Amazon storefront for you guys to check out. That link's just at the top of our page as well. But again, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe.